So, lesson 5 deals with events and event handling. And so far, we have been doing what's I would refer to as HTML events because we are having the event handler in the HTML tag. And that is probably not the best way to handle events. What I actually normally use is an event listener and a separate event handler. And you guys are going to be learning how to do that this week. And that is the preferred way of handling events in JavaScript. So after you read the book, uh, the overview tells you the 3 different ways to handle events. HTML attribute is what we have been doing. Uh, you can use DOM property, and you can also use event listeners and handlers. That is how I prefer to do it, but I will show you all the different ways. So we kind of talk about what happens during an event so you understand that. And I do have a video that goes through all of that for you. But we talk about the old way of doing it, right? And then we cover the new way of doing it or the preferred ways of doing it. So, how to use a DOM property. We cover the DOM property first. And so you'll see the same example done a couple different ways. So you'll see it the old way. Okay, and remember the old way is putting the event handler right into our HTML. Okay, so we kind of connect it to the button. And so here is the event handler. That's the old way. And then you learn one of the new ways of doing it. Okay, so it's the same end result, but it's just a different way of doing it because you'll notice that up here, we do not have on click. Okay, so it's just a little different way of handling it. Instead, we're using the DOM property on click. Okay, and so it just shows you a couple different ways to code the same thing. One is using a named function, and the other is an anonymous function. It's anonymous because it does not have a name. Okay, so all of these different ways of handling events are covered. And as I mentioned, the way that I prefer is to do an event listener and an event handler. So it talks about how to set that up. I've seen this technique used in many different programming languages, which is one of the reasons that I prefer it. So you'll learn how to use event listeners and handlers. Another reason I like this is because you can set up multiple event listeners for a single element. So, you can have it do one thing if they click on it. You can have it do something else if they move the mouse over it. It's just a very flexible way of handling events. Um, so this goes through those 3 ways of handling events. And then we get into the event object. And I have a video for you guys to watch. Um, there are properties that are with events. And so this lists some of the more popular properties. And there's a comprehensive list here if you want to see all of them. And then as we go through, you'll see that there's also a bunch of methods. So this kind of goes through handling just additional examples of handling events. Then we get into types of events. And this is where we get into the different methods. So I go through some of the browser object model events. And there's interactive examples. And then we get into some window object properties. okay, navigator, and then we get into the DOM. And animation can be accomplished using DOM events. So you're going to see how to animate something in your code. And you're actually going to create something like this. So, uh, and it took me quite a while when I first did this to get the image to connect here. Because you're not going to find a tutorial on this anywhere on the web, or at least it didn't used to exist. But I will explain to you how it works. And there is videos that you can watch here. Okay. And there's also videos in our assignment. So for this assignment, the best way to learn how to use the DOM event and the event listener and handler is to take something that has the HTML attribute event and convert it over. So you're going to be downloading these files, and this file has the attribute event handler. You'll notice that there's also some fonts that you're going to download. And this file actually works right now, okay? But it's using the HTML attribute handlers. So we've got one here, okay? We've got one here, we've got one here. And you need to convert that so that it uses the JavaScript DOM and the listener, add listener, event listener, and the handler instead of the attributes. So that's what your task is going to be. But if you wanted to check this out, it does work. And if you download the fonts, you get these fun little messages when you run your page. Okay, so that is your first task. And so I do have a video that goes into more detail in how to make those changes. Then you are going to adjust the event handler and the event listener and create an anonymous function. Okay, so this basically describes what you need to do there. Then you are going to be creating a little animated page similar to Zeppo's world. You're going to pick your own background. You're going to pick your own character. This can be used as one of your games. Okay, so you are going to want to do a good job on this. For the little character that you animate, you're going to want to use a PNG file, a PNG with a transparent background. Otherwise, it's going to have like a white background, and it's not going to look good, on whatever background you chose. So one of the tricks to doing this is to make sure that when he goes down, you stop before he goes past the bottom of the graphic. And when he goes up, you want to stop before he goes up off your screen. Same with right and left. So you do need to put those limits in there. And, if you look at my code, you will see that I have those limits in there as well. I'm checking the X position and the Y position, and that's limiting where he goes on my background. So, depending on the size of your graphic, you're going to have different values than me. Okay, so that is task 4. And task 5 deals with the browser. object model, events, and properties. You should be familiar with how to use them. In the key points from the chapter, there are tons of examples for you to look at, and I actually included some of them here. But there's more in the lecture demo. Um, and you need to come up with a page that uses two window object methods, uses one location object method, where you display window information using those window object properties. So how you do this is up to you. I've had students set it up as an interactive game, which was quite amusing. I've had students use buttons and, kind of it's very linear and vertical. So they start and they do this, and then they do this, all the way down. That is fine too. You figure out how you want to accomplish these tasks. I have examples for you to look at. Okay, so this is creating and closing a window and moving it, or modifying it and resizing it. You notice I'm using buttons here. Here's just window information. Now, could you combine these on one page? Absolutely. A lot of students choose to do that. They do a section like this, then they take this and they move it below. That's perfectly fine. However you want to set this up. Information about the screen. Okay, and again, they'll take this and they'll move it down. And instead of doing all of these separate little areas, they might have an area off to the right where they display things. Like I said, this is totally up to you how you set this up. So I just have examples for you to look at. It's up to you how you implement them. So that is the assignment. And this, if you run into problems on this, and some students do, they get kind of stuck on some of these different sections, uh, just transfer your pages and email me and I will take a look at it. Let me know if you have any questions and have a great week.